Hey everyone, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about some differences between the Medtronic CGM and the Dexcom G4 sensor and receiver. Um, you might be familiar with a previous video I did, which was just changing out my insulin pump. I've been a Medtronic insulin pump user since I was about 15. Um, I've tried all three iterations of the Medtronic's continuous glucose monitoring systems back when it was a big mouse-shaped device, and then also with the SoftSerter, and then most recently with the uh, newest one, Enlite. I had a previous video up about the Enlite. I had some positive results with that one, which I had not had previously with the other two, and it was very exciting. So I made a video probably two sensors into it, and I've since taken that video down because I felt like it was not representative at all of what my inevitable or um, uh, complete relationship was with those Enlite sensors. As you can tell, I have since changed over to a Dexcom, and I'll tell you briefly why, and then I want to talk about why the Dexcom has worked so much better for me. I've made some lists, and I hope this will help someone who's trying to decide either which one to use, or if they're having trouble with the Medtronic and thinking that CGMs just don't work for them. I'm here to tell you that it's not you, it's Medtronic. I used 3 months worth of the Medtronic sensors, so 15 full sensors, and of those I probably had to call and get replacements from Medtronic for at least 10 of the 15 after they would stop working for me within the first day to 2 days. They were supposed to work 7. And I spent countless hours on the phone with Medtronic discussing why, every excuse they could give me as to why those did not work for me. Um, you would be amazed at the amount of things they will tell you as to why the sensor is not working properly for you, is not noticing changes in your blood sugar at all. I mean, we discussed specifics as to how to tape it exactly, down to the pull the tape this way first, then move it over your skin, and then tape things like whether I was hydrated. There were things about when was I calibrating, I know that I was calibrating at the proper times. My life really revolved around when I could calibrate this thing, and it still wasn't working. So after my 3 month supply was over, I decided to not repurchase any more sensors. Because my transmitter was still in warranty, we actually had to pay out of pocket for the Dexcom transmitter, but that was how frustrated I was. I wanted this CGM technology to work for me, because when the Medtronic did work, I could see how much of a help it was. It was worth me trying one that worked, more than 25% of the time. So even though I still have a pump, I carry this one around with me as well. So I went from one device to two. That's a lot of people's reasoning for doing the Medtronic, is they already have the pump, or they think it's a lot better to be integrated into one device. And it would be great to be integrated into one device if it had worked for me, but it did not. And I will also mention that after I advised Medtronic that I would not order any more sensors, I was never contacted to ask, why I was switching or anything like that. I've been a customer for them for 15 years with the insulin pump, and I've had what I feel is horrible customer service with the CGM. That said, it couldn't have been more different with this one. I signed up on their website on a Sunday, gave them my phone number and email address, and I had a call from them at 8 a.m. the following Monday asking me how I wanted to get started with the Dexcom, and it's been like that ever since. So I'll start to talk about some comparisons and differences that I see with the two devices. Um, First of all, this one is 100,000% more accurate for me than the Medtronic ever was. When I say accurate, I mean that right now it says that I'm 204. I checked it a few minutes ago. I did already fix this number, but I checked it a few minutes ago when it was climbing up, and it was 4 points off. And this is a new sensor. I just started it this morning, and it's already that accurate. Further, when this one is moving, I think a lot of what Medtronic likes to tell you is if your blood sugar is changing rapidly, essentially you can't trust anything that the sensor is telling you. This one, it doesn't even matter if it's changing rapidly. I find that it reacts to quickly decreasing blood sugars as well as quickly increasing blood sugars. That's what helps me the most, is that if I forget to do a bolus, or one night I fell asleep and accidentally forgot to attach my pump, this thing woke me up just because of the quickness that I was rising. I have it set for a rise rate. It woke me up, and otherwise I would have been asleep all night without my insulin pump, which would have been, disastrous. Just most simply, the accuracy. This thing has never steered me wrong. I've used now 6 to 8 maybe different sensors, and those have all worked 7 days, if not a little longer, if I want to wear them a little longer. One did not, and I called them, and they sent me a replacement. And truthfully, I think the reason that one didn't work is because I had a massage, and I think that the massage table and the masseuse pushing down onto my back probably kind of was a little too much pressure on the sensor. So I think that was the reason that one messed up in all actuality. Excuse me. So, second thing, this one is way more user-friendly, okay? A lot of people might say that it's more simplistic, or doesn't have enough features, or it doesn't have as many features, or things that you can kind of personalize as the Medtronic. But for me, I like that. I don't have to think as much. I don't have to make as many different decisions. But there is obviously, a high rate, like a high number and a low number that you can set. I've set mine at 265. And then you can also set rise rates and fall rates just like on the Medtronic. The only thing that this doesn't have is the predicted low and the predicted high. I felt like that was overkill anyway with the Medtronic, because if you've got your high rate or your rise rate or your fall rate already set, you're going to get that predicted low about the same time as you get those alarms anyway. So, calibrations, that's the third thing, sorry. Calibrations are so much easier with this one. The reason is it requires one every 12 hours, just like the Medtronic. It does not require one 6 hours after your first. So the Medtronic was, 2 hours into the sensor, it would ask you for a calibration, and then within the next 6 hours, you had to give it another calibration. This one does not have that rule. This one is just 12 hours, every time 12 hours. The other positive thing about this one is it gives you a big picture of a big drop of blood when it needs the calibration if you've gotten to the 12-hour mark. But if you get to the 12-hour mark and you can't give it a calibration immediately, it doesn't stop giving you numbers. So it's so much better, because the Medtronic would unilaterally stop showing you numbers on the graph until you could calibrate. And say that it just worked out that your 12-hour calibration is due at 8:30 when you just ate breakfast at 8. Well, you can't calibrate it quite yet. Your blood sugar is probably changing really rapidly and you don't want to calibrate it. The thing about this one is, for the next however many hours before you can get it calibrated, it will continue to give you numbers. Now, obviously, I don't suggest waiting, longer to give it calibrations. I give this probably 3 to 4 calibrations a day. Whenever I see that it has got this straight arrow, a lot of times I will go ahead and check then, because I know that it's pretty steady, and go ahead and give it a number at that point. Also, I don't get cal errors anymore. I don't know if anybody saw my other video before I took it down, but a lot of my issue was calibration errors, because the Medtronic sensor was not correctly assessing changes in my blood sugar. So when I gave it an accurate number, it would give me a calibration error, because say it would think I was 130 when I'd actually gone up to 200 or 250, and it would give me constant calibration errors, and that was part of my problem. their reasoning was saying that the sensor wasn't working in me, and I was starting to think that my interstitial fluid just had issues and that no sensor would ever work for me, and that was obviously incorrect. But I will say that this one will take numbers that are not perfect. So at the beginning of the sensor, sometimes maybe the first day or two, it is kind of wacky. So it's going to overshoot lows and overshoot highs. That's what I've noticed. It's overly, oh, it's telling me right now I'm high. It is overly sensitive. So, for example, I remember one day it said I was 300 and 350, something like that. I was actually only 250. So it was just kind of spiking up, and it spiked up too much. So I took that time to calibrate it because it was steady and I was 250. Maybe I was even lower than that, but I was at least 100 points off of what it told me I was. And I calibrated it, and it just reacted, and it did not give me 3 question marks, which is the equivalent, I think, of a calibration error on the Dexcom. If it doesn't know how to read your readings at that point, it gives you 3 question marks. But anyway, I very, very rarely get those, and I never get them because I've calibrated a number. So it will take any number that you give it and take that into account, whereas I felt like the Medtronic's calibration system was so rigid that it would not let you help it. I was constantly babying the Medtronic, whereas this one, there's no thought into it at all. I just check my blood sugar, put it in there. That's all there is to it. Okay, let me look at the next thing. Minimal alarms. So I like this one. You have to actually set this one to continue alarming you. So once it's told you you're high once, unless you put a snooze on there, which kind of is an odd word for it because it's not a snooze. Unless you put a snooze on there, it will not re-alarm you. So say you're 200 and you're 200 and then you keep climbing. It's not going to alarm you again. So I like to set that for like 2 hours or 1 hour. The Medtronic, though, didn't even have that choice. I think the highest you could set the thing to re-alarm you was maybe 1 hour or 2 hours at the most, and I think for a low it was 1 hour. But like I said, minimal alarm. So like when this one needs a calibration, it doesn't vibrate or alarm. It just gives me the blood drop. So as opposed to the Medtronic would wake me up in the middle of the night to alarm me to tell me that I had to do a calibration. Okay, and then I'm trying to think about more issues with this before I get into the actual sensor issues and the transmitter. The size of the receiver, I've talked about, having 2 devices. I looked at the Dexcom kind of on YouTube when it was that big egg shape. I think it was like, more shaped like this. And I thought that was too big for me to carry in my purse and all that. This thing is tiny. So here it is next to an iPhone 5. So it's as thin as my phone and much smaller than my phone. It's also really inconspicuous. It kind of looks like a music player or just something like that. So I can have it on the table at dinner and I don't feel weird about it. Oh, and as for a female, another positive that I've thought about having 2 devices, never occurred to me because I was thinking about all the negatives that it would be for having 2 devices. But a positive I've found is, I don't know for a lot of other women, but I work in a professional environment, so I usually have my insulin pump inside of an undergarment that's not really accessible, from minute to minute. And I have found that is actually nice to have a second device that I can look at freely without it being connected to me to see my numbers. So the Medtronic was constantly alarming me, and I would have to get it out of my clothes to look at what the number was, and I also couldn't just, casually look at it throughout the day, whereas this one is always accessible, and it doesn't, it's not connected to me, and it's not under my clothes or anything like that. So I like that. I look at this one more because it's 2 devices. The other thing about this that I will mention is the loss of signal and the signal strength and all that. I would sometimes get a weak signal, which meant that the transmitter and my pump were not talking. I would sometimes get that with literally the sensor on one side of my stomach and the pump kind of around towards the back of the other side of my stomach. So literally between my own body, it would get a weak signal. That's how bad the Medtronic one was for me. And if it has a weak signal for more than 15 minutes, it's going to alarm you. So in the middle of the night, if your sensor is not close enough to your pump, it's going to alarm you. This one literally continues to amaze me how far the transmitter works. They say it's up to 20 feet. I know it's up to 20 feet, and I think it's more. And so I, for example, leave this in my office all day. And if I run to the printer, if I run to a coworker's office, it's going to keep working. I can leave it over on the couch while I cook dinner, and it's going to keep working. It's very hard for it to miss a number. I mean, you really have to get really far away from it. And if it does miss a number, it doesn't alert you. It doesn't tell you, you're out of signal or you're out of range. Now there is an out of range alarm that you can set on here, but I've never felt the need to do that. All it will do is you will miss some of the dots. So then when you come back, you'll have some dots that are missing. And also, let me quickly show you a negative that I heard a lot of people say is that you can't scroll back from your numbers. So, you can only see what your most recent number was. But that's not a problem to me. I mean, I trust, that's what this arrow is for, because the arrow is going to tell you if you're straight, or if you're trending up or down, or if you're going straight up or down, or if you're going 2 arrows up or down, which is the different things they give you on the arrows. So it kind of helps you know. You don't have to know what your last number was if it tells you if you're going up or down. But you do get to look at the graphs in some different ways. So let me show you that. So that's 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, and this is a horrible graph for me to show in this video, and 24 hours. Now, I did not wear this last night. I went ahead and took my old one off last night and just gave myself a night without it, so that's why there's only half of the graph showing in the 24 hours. And like I said, don't judge me on this. It's not good. So I think I've said everything about the kind of more kind of more receiver pros and cons. So I'll talk for a minute about the actual the sensor device and the transmitter that sits on top of it, and what I like better about the Dexcom, or the differences between the Dexcom and the Medtronic. So I will say this one's easier to sleep on. It's easier to do everything with. If people are familiar with how the Enlite sensor works, the sensor goes in at an angle, and then the transmitter hooks to the right side or left side of it, depending on how you place it on your stomach. And then the tape goes on top of that and kind of, houses it down, but it's always pulling because it's connected to the side of the sensor. What I like about Dexcom is the Dexcom transmitter is connected to the top of the sensor. So you place the sensor in, and then the transmitter is literally right on top of it. So I will show you really quickly what I mean. And the positives that I feel about that, I will try to explain. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So you've got something that is just right on top of the sensor. So nothing is getting pulled, the weight of this is not affecting the sensor under there. So I find that there's a lot less interference when I exercise, when I jog, when I lay on it. If it hits something, I just feel like I can live my life and not worry about hitting this thing, about it, pulling a little bit, like everything. This to me is just like my infusion set. I don't even know sometimes where my infusion set is on my stomach. I just don't even think about it. I've gotten to that point with this. I never got to that point with the Medtronic because I was always concerned that the tape was messing up, or it was pulling, or I was laying on it and the transmitter was getting pushed down, which was messing up the sensor under my skin. Whereas this one, it's completely flat, so you can't really hurt it because it's on top of your skin and a flat surface, if that makes sense. The transmitter itself is a little bigger on this. like height-wise. So off of my skin, it does come off of my skin a little bit more than the little seashell Medtronic one did, but that is a small price to pay. Um, and it never shows up under my clothes or anything like that, so it's never an issue. As for insertion, I had a lot of issues with the, I will say that the Enlite did not hurt when it was inserted, but I had a lot of issues with taking it out of the inserter. So you push these buttons and you're trying to take it out of the inserter like this, and it would always pull off of my stomach. That was another issue I had with Medtronic sensors. This one you do have to manually insert. I know there's plenty of videos on insertion of these things, so I'm not going to focus on that. But the insertion is not as great because it is manual, so you have to, kind of know that you're pushing a needle in. But you don't see the needle, and if you push it in fast enough, it doesn't hurt. It's not that big of a deal. I use skin tack to help with the adhesive of the actual tape that the white tape that comes with it, and with the skin tack, I can make it work for 7 days. And I know, other people, you sometimes have to put tape on it or tape around it. I haven't found that since I started using the skin tack. So I really don't have any complaints about the sensor itself. If anything, it's so much better than the Medtronic because I worry about this one less. I feel like it's so much more secure on my skin, and I worry less about the actual sensor, cannula messing up. So let me look and see if there's anything else I missed. I don't want to seem like I am being overly negative, because like I said, I gave Medtronic 3 different sensors. I gave all of their 3 different sensors a try. And what I've decided is that probably whatever technology they use inside that sensor to judge the changes in your blood sugar, judge the changes in your interstitial fluid, it just didn't work for me. It didn't work. So when my blood sugar would change, it most always would not notice. I've read a lot of papers about the Medtronic, and I do think that their issues are more far-reaching and affect more people than they probably want to admit. And from what I've read, I just don't see the issues with this one. And then personally, obviously, I don't have the issues. So I wanted to make a video, which is now very long. I'm looking at the length. But I wanted to make a video. I wanted to wait till I'd use this for a good period of time so that I didn't jump on the bandwagon too fast, the way I did with the Medtronic sensor. And like I said, I've used this for over 2 months, and I've used at least 8 sensors, all 7 days each, except for one, and 2 or 3 of them I've worn for 10 days. I don't like wearing them for longer than that because I think eventually they do start to fall off, and there's no reason why I can't change it every 7 days. They're covered by my insurance, so I don't have to try to make them last 2 and 3 weeks. But I have heard that people are able to do that. So I feel like I have a really good, truthful, well-rounded opinion on this now. So I wanted to just make this video and help anybody that's still trying to make a decision about whether CGM is good for them or right for them, and which one to choose. If this ever gets correctly integrated into that Animas pump, I think it's called the Vibe, and approved in the United States, I will not hesitate to change pumps. That's how much I love this system. I will leave the Medtronic pump and go to a pump that has this integrated. But right now, the 2 systems is really not a problem for me. Like I said, I kind of like having 2 different devices. So I love this, and I would suggest it to anyone who's unhappy with the Medtronic system or just has another insulin pump or uses shots or anything. I think this would help a lot of people with type 1. And so anyway, leave any questions you have below and I'll try to answer them. And any more ideas for videos or anything like that, I'd be happy to make some more. So thanks so much.